In your working folder, you will find a document called opacitymasks.ai. Go ahead and open that thing up. We are about to stand clipping masks on their heads. Now this document, let me do something. I'm going to hold down the Control key, that's Control in Windows, Command on a Mac, and press the minus key on my 10 keypad, which changes my zoom. I've actually created 3 artboards. Now I could have put those in 3 documents and said open up opacity mask 1, 2, 3, which would be fine. This way is, I don't know, a little bit more economical, I suppose. Let me double click on the hand tool to get back to that first one, and we will navigate between artboards. We talked about these before by clicking this little button right here. Let's go back to 1. What is an opacity mask? Well, I think let's first ask what is a clipping mask. A clipping mask is a now you see it, now you don't kind of philosophy. The state of Kansas that we did in the previous lesson, the piggy bank that we did, it was cut out like it was cut out with a pair of scissors. Okay, I don't want that. I want a vignette around her, but I want a soft vignette. Can we do that? Yes, we can. Let's start by picking up a vector tool, though, like our ellipse. And I'm going to hold down the Option key. That's the Option key on a Mac and the Alt key in Windows, but not the Shift key, because I want an oval or an ellipse. I don't want a perfect circle. Maybe something, I don't know, about like that. Now, we don't want a stroke. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to click and turn that off. Also, this is important. The color must be white. So you might want to start by clicking this button, which is default white to black. Then click here and turn that off. You don't want a stroke. Opacity masks work with a shade of gray, just like Photoshop masks. The darker the shade of gray, the more transparent. Also, if you create like a blur, the transparency on the edge will be interpreted as softness. Now let me pull that down. Let me pick up my selection tool. Pull that down just a little bit because I don't want it kind of bleeding off this edge right up here. And we'll leave it right about there. Now go up to the word effect on the pull down menu and go down to blur, Gaussian blur. And let's see what we got there. We got a 6.8. Let's go to about a 7. Now it's not a lot, but you'll be able to see it. It is soft. Click OK. Now let's select both of these. Go up to the word object and go down to clipping mask make and watch what happens. Well, now you see it, now you don't. Clipping masks work with the path, not with the color, or a shade of gray actually. So the path began and end, the image begins and ends. That's not what we want. Undo that. Go over into your area here to the right and pick up your transparency panel. If you don't see it, go up to the word window. We have a Make Mask button here too. What's the difference? This one's an opacity mask. Watch what happens when I click it. Now look at that. It is indeed soft on the edges. Now you have 2 buttons over here. If you click this one, you can do things to the image. Move it, apply a filter, do something else. If you don't like the vignette and you want to change that, you can click on this one and then work on that. All the control you need. You click release and it'll take it apart again. Now it is working with a shade of gray. So let's do this. Let's release this one. See, it'll come right back to the way it was. Let's come over here and pick up our rectangle tool. Now draw a rectangle. It should be white because that's our default over here. Leave that alone. And just come over here. It should snap too. So just go ahead and snap it to that cloud layer down there. Now come over here and go back to the fill and then change to the gradient, black and white right here. It's a standard gradient, just like that. Select both just by kind of grabbing like that and click Make Mask. Now it's not going light here. Okay, it's not going light, it's going transparent. Up here, let's go ahead and get rid of that so we can see her again. If I move this one up here, you can begin to see through, but the more I go to the left, the less I see of her because the color is getting lighter. The shade of gray is getting lighter. When it finally gets to white, you wouldn't see her at all. So the control, it's kind of cool. We could come over here and click on this, and then come over, say, into our gradient. And if I move the black this way, I get more transparency. If I move it this way, I get more of the clouds. I can do anything I want. Shades of gray. We've done that in Photoshop for years. We can do it in Illustrator too. And again, if you're done with what you've got done here, you can click Release. Take it apart. Now let's go to our artboard number 2. Now on this one, I've got some clouds, okay, which I've converted into an outline. And I've got the clouds in the background. Let's do this. Select the clouds, or the word clouds, I should say, and put that gradient on it again. Okay, so we're going from black to white, and then select both and make the mask. Now you can see how it's getting lighter on one side and then going darker as it gets into the darker shades of gray. And we can control that. Just click right here, change the gradient any way you want it to go. Now we do have an invert button up here and a clip button right here. Watch what happens when I turn off clip. This is kind of neat. It leaves the clouds the way they are with the opacity mask and brings the rest of the clouds back, so you kind of have the word clouds spelled out inside of those clouds. That's kind of cool. Now you can invert the mask too if you want to do that, reverse the effect. But the clipping part's actually kind of neat, and yes, anytime you don't like what you see and you want to go back, you can click release. Now let's go to our third one. Now on this third one, I have a photograph, and then I have this kind of like wonky pattern underneath it. Now I'm doing this just to illustrate a fact. We have been working with vectors with shades of gray in them, like the vignette and the word clouds and the gradient we put over the clouds. Those are all vectors. That's a photograph. It's not a vector. It hasn't been converted to vector. It is a photo. Opacity masks do not have to have the mask as an actual vector. They are looking for shades of gray. So I took that photo into Adobe Photoshop and I converted it into shades of gray. Then I select, say, this and this down here and say make mask. Now it's kind of hard to see, I will admit. But as you can see, it's actually using the shades of gray in the image to bring the colors through of that wonky image in the back. Let me see if I can get rid of this in the background. I have one more thing in the background here. Might be easier to see if I kind of get rid of this. There you go. That's a little bit easier to see it. We've actually used a photograph as an opacity mask. So clipping masks, now you see it, now you don't. They have their place in Illustrator and I love them. But opacity masks work just like they do in Photoshop, working not with vector, but with shades of gray. Black, white, or a shade of gray. Opacity masks.